This week on Supercars Torque, there's a new calendar to talk about, more engineering changes, teams are building new cars, and Rhiannon Crean retires. Big news this week. Rhiannon Crean has retired from the telecasts. I don't think the word retired was actually used, but she won't be in the telecasts next year, unfortunately. When she started off, I was a bit like, here we go, Will Davo's girlfriend, bit of a pretty face. I think she's done a great job. The early days were a little bit green, I suppose, but yeah, I've become a fan of hers. It's good. There's been a few sad times where she's had to interview Will after certain incidents and that have happened, and always done a really good job in trying times. So that is definitely not a good thing for the telecasts, and I think I've made my feelings known in previous videos about some of the other people that we could probably cut, and Rhiannon was definitely one that I would have preferred us to keep. There's some changes going on at Matt Stone Racing. They're not going to be a 3-car team next year. Surprise, surprise. They haven't been able to get a licence. I wasn't holding my breath if Tickford's struggling to get one. I have heard whisperings that Tickford is going to be able to get a licence, but they're not going to be able to buy one. It will be kind of like borrowed kind of from Supercars, and there won't be any income attached to that one. Whether that's true or not, we'll see whether they line up with 4 cars at the start of next year, and then who is the odd car out in pit lane. Anyway, no 3-car team from MSR. I'm hearing that Gary Jacobson is the odd man out there, and Zane Goddard and the Kostecki, whichever one Jake was driving there this year, they're going to be the full-time pilots next year. They won't be sharing the team like they were. Probably the big news for this team this week, though, if that's not big enough, Wes McDougall, their main engineer, he's departing for Triple Eight. Now, that is going to happen straight away. I've seen a lot of comments on the internet this week about the gardening leave that Grant McPherson, or Shippy, is going to have to take moving from Triple Eight to Walkinshaws. There's been a lot of comments about, it's not fair that Wes McDougall's going to go straight to Triple Eight while Shippy has to go and do 6 months gardening leave. Right. It's not that Roland's just saying, no, you have to go and, tend to your garden for 6 months. It's called gardening leave, I suppose, is a bit of a joke, as what else are you going to do when you're not allowed to work for 6 months? But, let's go and mow the lawns and, prune the bushes and things like that. So what happens, it's not something that Roland will have in the contracts, that you have to give 6 months notice before walking out. So Shippy would have come along and said, look, Roland, I'm handing in my notice. I'm going to move to Walkinshaws. This is my 6 months notice. Depending on your job and things like that, like I'm kind of bottom of the pile at my work, I have to give, I think I have to give 4 weeks notice if I'm going to move on somewhere. That gives them time to find a replacement, things like that. I've got mates who have to give like 3 months notice and things like that. They're in a bit higher jobs, in a high engineering job in Supercars, F1, things like that, you have to give longer periods of notice. So Shippy hands in his notice, says, right, I'm going to be leaving. What do you want me to do for this next 6 months? And Roland's not going to say, hey, well, come and engineer our cars and keep, learning all the things that we're doing. He says, no, we'll they'll be paying Shippy for the 6 months to go and sit and not do anything. But then there's less chance. All he can take with him in his head is the stuff from this year. He doesn't learn anything new. He can't be in any of the meetings for the Gen 3 stuff and all of that. So it minimises the amount of data or whatever that you're taking to the new team. It's not that Roland's just saying, nope, you can't go and work for 6 months. He'll be earning his wage for it. And then there's times where, like it was brought up that Adrian Burgess went straight from Dick Johnson Racing to Triple Eight in 2010 or at the end of 2010, and he probably would have had a 6 or 12 month kind of leave notice in his contract at the time, but there would have been, hey, Dick, do you want to pay me for the next 6 months? Here's my notice, kind of thing. I'll leave in 6 months' time. Do you want to keep paying me for that period of time while I'm not? Or you got Triple Eight there who's willing to pay, and in circumstances like that, you move straight away. Then people bring up, oh, well, why don't the drivers have this kind of gardening leave period? Well, the drivers will have a fixed period contract, whereas like the engineering staff have probably got a rolling kind of contract where it just keeps going until you hand in your notice or you get told you're no longer required, whereas the drivers will have, say, contracted to the end of the last race, to the end of the season, to December 31st and things like that. The drivers will have an actual end date in their contract rather than a rolling thing where they have to give notice. And there has been times where a driver has been found that they're going to a different team the next year and they've been told, don't bother turning up to the last couple of races or however long in the season. We'll bring on the next bloke. We'll use one of our co-drivers, things like that. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any examples. Dave Reynolds nearly got shuffled out of Kelly's when he was going to Tickford at the time. But I'm sure in the comments, if there is an example that you know of where a driver didn't complete the last couple of rounds because he was moving somewhere else the next year. Other news this week, Walkinshaws are building a new chassis for next year as well. Surprisingly enough, there's only 1 year to go on the current rules, and that is Walkinshaws, Tickford, Triple Eight are all building new cars, and I've heard Kelly's are building another car as a spare as well. It's just blown away, especially the Walkinshaw one, because for years I think Tander and Courtney had both complained about the chassis being cursed and things like that and needing to be replaced, and they were so reluctant to do it, and then all of a sudden, we'll build Chaz a new car every year. Yeah, the complaints that the cars are costing too much, maybe they're not. On to the calendar for next year. Super 2 and Super 3 will be combined again. They are all going to run on the same Dunlop Control tyres this year, though. There won't be any Kumos for the Super 3 cars like there was this year. That could potentially bring some of the Super 3 guys really on to the same kind of form as the Super 2 guys. Anyway, the calendar... February 14th, there will be a night test at Sydney Motorsport Park. I don't know why we just don't have an extended day. I'm not sure the night test, like just have from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or something testing. Anyway, it is what it is. The series kicks off at the end of February at Bathurst. Looks like it's going to be 2 by 250 kilometre races. Once again, for anyone complaining about this, it's essentially because they've got the date and for the 12-hour that won't be happening. So that's why we're going to Bathurst twice this year, and it won't affect the 1,000. The 1,000 is still there in October. Next up, March 18th to 21st, Albert Park. If the Formula 1 doesn't happen, Sandown has been booked and is ready to go. Unfortunately, that's potentially the only time we'll see the cars at Sandown this year or next year. Sandown's not getting a look in. It is a bit of a condensed calendar, I suppose. Bit of a COVID kind of calendar. I guess. April 10th, 11th, we go down to Simmons Plains. May 8, 9 at Taylor Bend. May 29, 30 at Winton. June 19, 20, Hidden Valley. These are all 2-day events. Then we're back to 3-day events with Townsville in July. August, SMP, the first of the night races. Then September 11th and 12th, Wanneroo for another night race. October 7th and 10th, we go to Bathurst for the 1,000. November 6th, 7th to Pukekohe. And December 3 to 5 at Surfers Paradise for the finale, which I think is supposed to be a night race as well. So that'll be including the test, 4 lots of night times. The Super 2 and 3 will be at both of the Bathurst rounds, at Winton, at Sydney Motorsport Park, Wanneroo, and finishing off the season at Surfers Paradise, which I suppose isn't really a surprise there because they did do rounds at Adelaide and Newcastle in previous years. There's a big gap with them between the first round of Bathurst and then Winton, but they finish off the year strong, so there will be a bit of momentum there. The Super 2 always seems, when you started in Adelaide, finish in Newcastle, and only have a few rounds during the year, it seems very stretched out. At least they'll have a bit of momentum in their championship, with only missing the Pukekohe round towards the end of the year. Newcastle is off the calendar. Don't stress, everyone. It's going to be the opening round in 2022. People seem that, Newcastle's gone. There's been a lot of stories about it being the opener in 2022. And as I've said, I'm very happy that we've got, okay, maybe Bathurst isn't the right place to have a sprintish round, but at least Newcastle opening 2022, Surfers Paradise finishing off the season. All good that we've got these great street track events, big events to round out the calendar. It just means it's a bit of especially if the championship had been run and won by somebody, it's a bit of a non-event going to, say, Sydney Motorsport Park or Phillip Island or something like that for the finale, where there isn't spectacular street track or big crowds and things like that. It always seemed a bit more of an event, starting and finishing the round, especially starting of the year in Adelaide. That just seemed like starting with a big bang and then finishing in Homebush and Newcastle just seemed like a special event to top out the year. So that's the calendar. It is a bit more spread out and less rounds than previous years. But hopefully with Gen 3 coming on and hopefully vaccines and things like that, we can look to more normal, I suppose, 2022 with a couple more rounds popping in. Maybe see the return of like Queensland Raceway, Sandown, Phillip Island, as well as keeping, these street events. Yeah, could we get a second round in New Zealand? Please. Unfortunately, this week I'm going to have to end on a bit of a somber note. The 1983 Bathurst 1000 winner, John Harvey, did pass away. He had been suffering from lung cancer. For those of you who are a bit newer to the sport, John Harvey was kind of Peter Brock's right-hand man back in the Holden Dealer Team days. There is actually a really good book. I think it's called The Rise and Fall of Peter Brock. That covers a lot of the side of the story, I suppose, from John Harvey's side, a lot more what was going on there. And he was a lot more than just the bloke who happened. His car got taken over in '83. For those back in the old days, you could cross enter drivers into cars, and Peter Brock and Larry Perkins were entered in their normal car, which broke down very early in the race. So they took over John Harvey's car and went on to win the race. So Harvey got credited with the win. But he was definitely a lot more than just, that bloke toddling around keeping the second car running a lot of the time. It was unfortunate that he didn't get to share with Brock. He had his own car. from all reports, he was a great man, a great ambassador for the support for the whole sport, and yeah, his results don't kind of reflect how good a driver he was in that. So, unfortunately, that's a bit of a sad note, but these things happen. Yeah. So, on that note, I'll see you next week.